Hey, back in the basement again. Want to walk through my week on Juggernaut AI as I use it to prep for a USAPL meet. This is my 5th week of meet prep, and I'm now officially 65 days out as of Friday, February 25th. I literally just wrapped up my 4th day of training and just want to give you my immediate thoughts on the week, which I think went really, really well. Now, as part of this, I was really concerned this week because my work schedule was brutal for me, meaning that in most cases, I like to train during my lunch break. This gives me a great break from the morning to the afternoon, both physically and mentally, being able to step away from work, step away from my desk, the computer, Zoom calls, things like that, and really just get moving and really breaks up the day nicely. This week in particular, though, I was running a virtual training session all week for about 50 to 60 people across the world, and I decided a 30-minute break in between the morning and afternoon made the most sense so I could cram the most in, which is something I try to do both online and offline. But unfortunately, that meant I had to train after work, which isn't a huge deal for me. My wife was very accommodating, watching the kids and all that stuff. But I was really surprised at how much tighter my hips and my lower body was from having to sit basically twice as much as I normally did. So really off-putting and worried me a little bit, but like I said, the week went phenomenally well. So let's talk about the main lifts, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about RPE. So day one, my main squat day, set of 5, RPE 10. I went with 535. I hit it for all 5 reps and I rated it at a 9.5. So this is a PR for me. Really happy about that. And I feel like with all things considered, I really liked how these looked overall in terms of my depth, in terms of my form, in terms of the tempo, all that stuff. I couldn't be happier with this. Couldn't be happier with the short shorts I decided to wear on this specific day and this specific angle. You're welcome in advance. Really happy with this overall. Now, let's go ahead and look at day 3, and I'm gonna skip over day 2, although I might flash it on the screen right here, because as I've been saying, my day 2 work is always my easiest day. There's no main compounds, it's all variations, it's a nice break, but being an RPE 10 week, there was nothing to really show you from that, so I'm not gonna show it. Day 3 was my max effort deadlift day, and this one was a doozy. Deadlifts have been moving really well as of late, but again, wasn't really feeling it coming into the session. But I went with 585, hit it for a set of 4 at RPE 10, so I hit it right on the money. I don't think I could have gone any more. I know I posted this on Instagram and some people said, hey, that looked pretty smooth. I was dying on that last rep, and I think I really need to make sure that I'm locking out my knees because I have been called for soft knees in a meet before. I've only missed a lift because of it once, but I have been red lighted from some side judges here and there, so something to keep top of mind, and I'm hoping it's just because I was feeling really fatigued this particular day. But I think 585 for 4 is a PR. At least it's a PR from the last several years, so really happy about that too. So 2 out of 2 so far in terms of RPE 10s and PRs this week. So like I said, it went really, really well. Now, moving on to day 4, which is today, so literally like an hour ago, I wrapped up. My RPE 10 set was a bench, and bench is something I've really struggled. I wouldn't say struggled. It's just been consistently inconsistent in terms of progress. It's my slowest moving lift in terms of progression, but I do think it's moving in the right direction. I went with what I felt like was an aggressive number at 285, hit it for 5 reps, and I rated it at a 9.5. This is a lot better because in my last peaking session that I did, that I chronicled at least on here, I did a lot more touch and go, so I feel like my control is a little bit better here. I'm working on maybe just trying to pause the first rep and then just be controlled the rest, but overall hit this for a 9.5, so I felt like I might have been able to do one more. I probably would have used a lot more momentum in that case, but overall, again, 285 for 5 at an RP 9.5. Again, I think this is another PR for me, at least in the last couple of years. So 3 out of 3, hit all of these almost right on the money, dialed in the numbers at RPE 10. And all PRs for me personally, which I'm super happy about. So going to my dashboard, finishing this week, I just want to show you what it looks like when you wrap up this week. Again, how do I want to progress in my main lifts? I almost always keep it at a 3. I haven't been to the point where I felt so fatigued where I need to dial it back, but also I like the progression where I don't want to get burnt out. I don't want to update my maxes or update the progressions that it has me on too much because I have found that that makes me carry more fatigue. So I'm going to keep it as a 3. I'm gonna complete the week, and that's gonna give me a much needed deload week next week, in which case I'll film all that and talk about why I really like the deloads on this program, even though I've seen a lot of people say they're kind of a little bit too frequent for me, being basically every 4th week or so. So I'll talk about that in next week's video on the app itself. What I do want to talk about though on the rest of this video is RPEs and how to pick the right RPE 10 set. Now I made a post on Instagram explaining this. I'm basically going to cover it again. The way that I approach RPE 10s is, first of all, I look at my previous week's work. So using this app, you should be on the same rep schedule for that particular lift as your RPE 10 set would be. So like last week, I did sets of 5 on squats and bench and sets of 4 on deadlift. So I had a rough idea of where I was based off of the RPE, which typically those normal working weeks, I aim for around an RPE 8. That's where it should be. So I use that to gauge where I should be for my RPE 10 work. I also go into the app under the history tab, and I'll flash some screenshots here of what I'm showing about. And what I try to do is I try to look for recent-ish sets that were around the same RPE scale. So I'll take a look back at my history, and I've been using this app for 14 months now, so there's a lot of history there. And I'll try to gauge to see where my RPE 9s, 9.5s, and maybe even RPE 10 sets from previous blocks were at. And again, I'll factor that into what I did the previous week. The other thing that I also do, the third leg of this, if you will, is I take a look at my all-time history. So dating back for the past 14 months, basically through the app, what's my all-time PR best of that particular set or rep range or RPE? And I'll use that to gauge kind of my top idea of where I should really shoot for, because ideally for an RPE 10 set, I'm gonna hit some sort of PR, at least on the program. And that's really kind of my top end, what I aim for. But of course, what also plays a key factor is the last thing, and that's how I generally feel on that particular day, especially during warm-up. So during my pre-training survey, if I'm putting at anything less than a 3, I'll take that into consideration. If during the warm-ups, things just feel really tough, really slow, I'll take that into consideration. But I basically take all 4 of those things, so previous week's work, my recent-ish history, my all-time history, and then how I feel. And I'll use that to basically give me a range of a low range of where I want to be and a high range of where I want to be. And I'll make the call of exactly what number to pick. Now, usually I tend to go for the higher number because again, I want to challenge myself. And I know based off of those numbers that I'm setting in that range from low to high, that they're all doable based off of my previous performance. However, what I'd really suggest you to do in aiming for the RPE 10 sets is, try to hit a number that's doable, but also if you don't necessarily hit that RPE 10, so if you undershoot, that is not a bad thing. And in some cases, it might even be more beneficial, meaning that if you aim for a certain number, maybe it's a PR, maybe it's not, maybe it's just a heavy-ish weight for you that you're gonna really try to challenge yourself on, and you end up having an RPE 8.5 or 9 or 9.5. That's a huge win for me because number one, you did what you set out to do. You did it at an RPE of less than what you thought it would be. And it just builds a lot of positive momentum for you going forward into your next week. Now, on the other hand, if you really get aggressive and you overshoot that RPE, so maybe you had a set of 5 at RPE 10, you picked a weight and you could only do maybe 3 reps or 4 reps, so you fell short of that rep goal. You're still hitting that desired RPE, albeit at a lower rep range. You put that into the system and it's going to adjust your back off sets. It's also going to adapt your training and your projected training max accordingly. So no matter which way you fall, you're still going to be able to make it through and the program will adapt and cater to what you need to do. Obviously, if you can dial it right in, that's the best circumstance. And I think with time, the more you log and the more accurate you are with your ratings, and again, if you use those 4 steps that I've outlined, I think you'll get pretty close. As evidenced by my case, I hit 2 9.5s and 1 10, which I think were really, really accurate and good PR numbers for me. I think you'll get more familiar with it, but it just takes time. And the longer you use the app and the more history you have built out, obviously it's easier to do those things versus checking back on other training programs or training logs or Instagram even. That's a great way to film your lifts and post them so you can go back and check to see how you did it. But that's how I approach RPE 10 on this particular system. Hopefully that helps give you some insight. I'll update you guys, like I said, next week in terms of this recap on the Juggernaut AI for a deload week. And the week after that, the plan is to go through picking accessories as I'll be in a new strength training block and have to repick all my accessories, which should be pretty fun because I know a lot of you guys have been looking forward to that. If you have any questions on the program or anything else that I haven't covered that you'd like to see in other videos, let me know in the comment section below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.